Jim Bray's family traveled by covered wagon from Missouri to the Dallas area. The family settled and raised their children there. After serving time in the Navy, Mr. Bray purchased a 1,400-acre tract of land in Salina, Texas. And as Dallas expanded, many farms were sold and barns torn down. Mr. Bray heard of just such a barn and offered to take it out of the hands of a developer. He had the barn boards numbered, torn down, and reassembled on his 1,400 acres, and this was the start of Wildwood Farm. Wildwood was populated with top-notch cattle, including cutting horses and Shetland show ponies. The Shetlands were a hot commodity at this time and often sold for $30,000 to $60,000. Ronnie Graham remembers Mr. Bray bringing him ponies to train, and the ponies ended up riding in the back seat of his car. Eventually, the bottom fell out of the pony market, and Mr. Bray became involved with the American Saddlebred. It was about this time Mr. Bray became lifelong friends with Mr. and Mrs. Gaylord. The Gaylord Publishing Company purchased the Farmer's Stockman Publishing Company, and Mr. Bray was offered a position on the board. This business relationship carried over into the saddlebred world. They were both saddlebred devotees and spent a lot of time talking together about breeding and show horses. Mr. Gaylord's granddaughter, Mary Gaylord McLean, remembers going to the Wildwood Farm after school and hanging out watching Jim Kohler and Richard Robinson work the horses and even getting to ride some. She recalls Mr. Bray as the ultimate Texas gentleman, complete with a cowboy hat, boots, and being close family friends with both her grandfather and father. She tells of her father asking for Mr. Bray's advice on every horse they bought. The roster of trainers that worked for him was notable Pat Bloom, Doug Engelman, Babe Fields, Pep Pipont, Ralph Graham, Ronnie Graham, Jim Kohler, Tom Overly, Lonnie Quarles, Rich Robertson, Jack Noble, Harrison Shiflett, and Buddy Wagner. Jack Noble remembers arriving in Texas to interview with Mr. Bray and describes it as this. He was wearing a shiny gray suit with a red carnation on his lapel, a cowboy hat, and he was smoking a cigarette. He was a true Texan through and through. The breeding operation started off with a stallion named Blazing Genius of Happy Hollow. He was purchased in partnership with Mr. and Mrs. Bartush in April of 1949. He was the sire of numerous horses, among them Tommy's Lovely Pride and the Dam of Pride of Ridgefield. One of the top fraternity sires in the United States, he also sired Precious Possession. She was Reserve World's Champion Junior 5 gaited with Lee Roby, and World's Champion and Reserve World's Grand Champion Amateur 5 gaited with Joan Robinson Hill. When Blazing Genius of Happy Hollow died, Miss Sharp gave him Gold Note to stand. He would go on to sire almost 300 foals, many of which were top winners in the fraternity classes. Ridgefield's Genius was purchased in partnership with Mr. and Mrs. Bartush in February 1966. This big chestnut stallion produced almost 500 foals in his lifetime. And remember, this was before transported semen. As if that was not enough to keep him busy, he was also shown by Garland Bradshaw at Louisville and was winner in the 5-gaited division. His sons and daughters were sold to trainers all across the country and won championships at every level. One of his sons, Pride of Ridgefield, was one of the top producing fraternity sires in the United States. In the mid to late 40s, he bought a nice bay mare from Walter Grant of Oak Hill Farm in Ardmore, Oklahoma. Her name was Oak Hill Wings, and she produced a Reserve World's Champions for him, and also was the dam of Ridgefield's Genius Dare, who was one of 2 stallions he would stand in the late 60s. The other was Ridgefield's Genius Denmark. The other prominent stallion he stood was Wing Commander's King, a very prolific producer also for Wildwood Farm. He was purchased as a 3-year-old in August of 1969 from C. Thomas Galbraith to carry on the great breeding dynasty of Wildwood Farm. 2 other important brood mares Mr. Bray owned were Another Blue, the 2-year-old 5-gaited world champion in 1950. This mare purchased from Dodge Stables would go on to produce Another Blue Rosetta, who was shown by Dale Milligan and was used in the breeding programs of Simon Fredericks, Kalorama Farm, and ended up at Patty Milligan's. She was also the 3rd dam of another important breeding horse, Callaway's Blue Norther. The other one is Broodmare Hall of Fame mare Black Cherry. She produced numerous winners, one being Reserve World Champions C.H. Golden Cherry, also C.H. Ridgefield's Cherry Jubilee. Her offspring have produced for numerous breeding programs, including Hoppy Bennett's Undulata Farm. Wildwood Farm was in the business of putting a competitive show horse on the ground, and they did this. This was at a time when the Texas State Fair was a huge show with Walter Gant, Lee Roby, Dale Milligan, Charlie Judd, Lead Shipman, and numerous others showing up to compete against each other. The breeding business was strong, and 3 gentlemen worked with each other: Walter Gant from Oak Hill Farm in Ardmore, Oklahoma, Chuck Bartusch from Dallas, and Jim Bray from Salina. These men would often trade mares, stallions, and ideas, and when they did, it helped put some wonderful horses in the show ring. Wildwood Farm did not need to travel extensively to shows, since the trainers from other parts of the country came to Texas to purchase horses from them. After winning a World's Championship for Stacy Davis, W.C. Wildwood's 24-karat gold ended up on the West Coast with Christine Broader.
Champion Hail to Genius, a 3-year-old 3-gated World's Champion, was selected by Bonnie Byrne.
Wildwood's Sensation was selected by Dale Milligan for Ruth Daly. This top-notch 5-gated horse was shown under the name of Mona Lisa and was twice a reserve World's Champion. Wildwood Farm produced a huge amount of saddlebreds, and if you look back through your pedigrees, they are a part of everyone's breeding programs. Unfortunately, Mr. Bray passed away and Wildwood Farm had a dispersal sale. So while the farm is no longer producing foals, their breeding will live on in the genes of the new ones. Thank you, Mr. Bray, for what you have done for the saddlebred.